Her ex cornered her in a crowded restaurant. In desperation, she hid under a stranger's table and whispered, "Please pretend I'm yours." The stranger looked down at her with cold, gray eyes and smiled. He was the Mafia boss everyone feared, and he just claimed her in front of everyone. Clara's heels clicked against wet pavement as she ran, her breath coming in sharp bursts that burned her lungs. Behind her, Marcus's voice cut through the New York night like a blade. "You can't hide from me, Clara. You're mine." She didn't look back. Looking back was how he always caught her, with those eyes that used to promise love but now only held rage. Her phone was shattered, destroyed by Marcus before she escaped. Her wallet held only $17. The apartment key meant nothing because Marcus owned everything, including the cage she had called home for 4 years. The cold October air bit through her thin jacket, and the old bruises on her ribs screamed with every step. Just keep running. Find people, find lights, find anywhere but here. She had no one to call, no family since the orphanage, no friends since Marcus isolated her from everyone. No one had cared about Clara Bennett since her foster sister Mia died in her arms 5 years ago, leaving behind nothing but $60,000 in medical debt and a silence Clara still couldn't fill. The Manhattan district blazed ahead. Restaurants, bars, people in expensive coats laughing over wine, safety in numbers. She pushed harder, ignoring the blister forming on her heel, ignoring the curious glances from couples on the sidewalk. Marcus's footsteps pounded closer. He brought friends this time. She could hear at least 2 other sets of boots slapping the concrete. Jake and Connor, his drinking buddies who thought women were property to be disciplined. 3 against 1. Like always, he needed backup to feel like a man. A restaurant appeared on her right. Bellini's. The name, glowing in elegant gold script. Through the windows, she saw white tablecloths, crystal glasses, men in suits, the kind of place Marcus could never afford, which meant maybe, just maybe, he wouldn't follow her inside. She burst through the door. The maitre d' stepped forward, his professional smile faltering. "Miss, do you have a reservation? Please." The word came out broken. "Please. He's right behind me." The man's eyes shifted to the window where Marcus's face appeared, twisted with fury. Understanding flickered across the maitre d's features, but before he could respond, Marcus shoved the door open. "Clara, outside, now." Marcus's voice was deceptively calm, the voice he used right before things got ugly. Jake and Connor flanked him, hands in their jacket pockets. Clara backed away, scanning the restaurant. Most diners kept eating, practiced in the art of urban indifference. But toward the back, in a semicircular booth that commanded the entire room, sat 3 men who weren't ignoring anything. The man in the center held himself like a king surveying his kingdom. Dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble, all sharp angles and cold intelligence. He stood over 6 feet tall, his gray eyes cold as steel. His suit probably worth more than Clara had earned in her entire life working 3 jobs just to survive. He watched the commotion with the detached interest of someone analyzing a chess move. Across from him sat another man, older, with silver threading through his black hair and a scar cutting through his left eyebrow. They'd been deep in conversation, but now both watched Marcus's approach with the kind of stillness that predators have before they strike. Clara's survival instincts screamed. These weren't normal men. Everything about them, the way other diners gave their table a wide berth, the hulking bodyguard standing near the kitchen door, the intensity of their focus, screamed danger. But Marcus was a known danger. 4 years of bruises, 4 years of control, 4 years of being told she was nothing and belonged to no one. And right now, she'd take her chances with the devil she didn't know. She ran. Not toward the exit, not toward the kitchen, but toward them. Marcus lunged for her, his fingers grazing her jacket, but she was already sliding, the ridiculous action movie moves she'd only seen in films. But desperation made her bold. She dropped to the floor and slid right under the table between the dark-haired man's legs, pressing herself against his shins like a child hiding from a monster. The entire restaurant went silent. "Please," she whispered, tilting her head back to meet eyes so gray they looked like storm clouds in the dim light. "Please pretend I'm yours." Time stopped. The man stared down at her with an expression she couldn't read. Then slowly, a smile curved his lips. Not kind, not warm, but amused in the way a cat might be amused by a mouse doing something unexpected. "Well," he said, his voice is like aged whiskey, smooth and dangerous. "This is certainly new. If you want to know what satisfying happens next, like the video." share it with someone who loves drama, and subscribe so you don't miss Clara's story. Because the man she just hid under? He's Vincent Moretti, and he always collects what he's his. Marcus strode to the table, his face flushed crimson with rage, saying she was his girlfriend, that she was having an episode, that he only needed to take her outside, but the dark-haired man did not move an inch. His hand still resting in Clara's hair, his fingers stroking it lightly as though she were something precious that belonged to him. "Your girlfriend," he said, his voice as soft as a feather yet cold as ice. "Is that so?" "Yes," Marcus snarled. "We were just arguing. You know how women are. Overly emotional." "I do not know that, actually," the man replied, taking a slow sip of wine, his gray eyes never leaving Marcus, "because the women in my life know better than to run from me. Isn't that right, Cara?" The sweet Italian words slid from his lips like silk. Clara understood the script he was writing. "Yes," she said, forcing her voice to stay steady. "I am sorry. I was just afraid." He smiled, a smile that never reached his eyes but was enough to make Marcus hesitate. Afraid of what, cara mia? The older man sitting opposite, the one with the scar cutting across his eyebrow, let out a low laugh, leaning back in his chair, his gaze gleaming with the pleasure of someone watching a fine performance. Marcus looked back and forth between Clara and the stranger. "Listen," he said. "I do not know who you think you are. I know exactly who I am," the man replied, setting his glass down with deliberate care. "The question is whether you know who I am." The bodyguard near the kitchen door stepped forward. Not much, just enough for the light to catch the gun tucked inside his jacket. Jake whispered something into Marcus's ear, his face draining of color before flushing again with restrained fury. Because the dark-haired man continued, his hand still possessively resting on Clara's head. "I was attempting to enjoy a civilized dinner, and you interrupted it. You made my companion uncomfortable, and quite frankly, you are beginning to bore me. Those three things together are never a good combination." The threat lay beneath every word like a shark gliding under calm water. Marcus must have sensed it because he took a step back. "This is not over, Clara," he spat. "I believe it is over," the man replied, his smile unwavering. "In fact, I believe you are about to leave, all three of you. And if I were you, I would make certain our paths never cross again. I am very particular about those who touch what belongs to me." Marcus's eyes burned with hatred. He opened his mouth to speak, but Jake tugged at his sleeve. All three turned and walked out of the restaurant, the door slamming shut behind them. Slowly the restaurant returned to its usual rhythm, the clink of glasses, low murmurs of conversation, jazz music flowing from hidden speakers. Yet the tension at this table remained thick enough to cut. "You may come out now," the man said, his voice losing none of its edge, "though I must admit I am curious what you thought would happen next." Clara crawled out from beneath the table, her legs shaking so badly she could barely stand. She faced the man who had saved her, and for the first time saw him clearly under the warm lights. Terrifyingly handsome, cold to the point of cruelty, dangerous in every strand of hair. "Thank you," she breathed. "I am sorry. Vincent Moretti," the scarred man interrupted, his eyes sharp as blades. "Do you know who you just dragged into your family dispute?" The name hit Clara like a bucket of ice water. Moretti. Oh God. She had just hidden beneath the table of the most infamous Mafia boss in New York. Clara's face went completely white. "I should go," Clara stammered, stepping back. "I am truly sorry for the disturbance. I will leave right away. Sit down." Vincent did not raise his voice. He did not need to. Just 2 words, yet they carried the weight of an absolute command, the kind no one defies if they still wish to breathe. Clara froze mid-step. Survival instinct screamed at her to run, but her legs refused to obey. She glanced toward the door where Marcus's shadow had just disappeared, then back to the man watching her with emotionless gray eyes. "I do not think you understand your situation." Vincent tilted his head slightly, as though studying an interesting small creature. "You ran into my restaurant, hid under my table, begged me to protect you in front of more than 50 witnesses, and now you plan to simply say thank you and disappear." The scarred man Salvatore chuckled softly. "This girl has nerve, Vincent. Or she is stupid. Time will tell." Vincent did not take his eyes off Clara. "Sit down," he repeated, his voice a shade gentler this time, yet the danger in it far more concentrated. "I dislike having to repeat myself a 3rd time." Clara swallowed. Her feet moved on their own toward the booth, and she slid into the seat beside Vincent. Warmth radiated from him through the expensive suit, and she caught the scent of refined cologne mixed with something darker, more dangerous. "What do you know about me?" Vincent asked, his fingers tapping lightly on the table. Clara shook her head. Not much. Just the name. Moretti. Everyone in New York knows that name. And you still chose to hide under my table? She had no other choice, Clara replied, her voice trembling yet edged with defiance. Marcus would kill her. Maybe not tonight, maybe not tomorrow. But sooner or later he would kill her if she went back to him. And you think I am the safer choice? Something flickered in Vincent's eyes. Amusement, curiosity, or perhaps cruelty waiting its turn. You think a mafia boss is a safe refuge? You would kill me faster, Clara said plainly. At least then she would not have to endure another 4 years. Silence fell over the table like a heavy curtain. Salvatore stopped laughing. The bodyguard near the kitchen door tilted his head slightly. And Vincent, for the first time since Clara had seen him, looked genuinely surprised. 4 years, he repeated, his voice dropping. You were with that man for 4 years. It was not a question. Clara did not answer. She did not need to. The old bruises along her ribs, the way she hunched as if trying to make herself as small as possible. The deep fear lodged in her eyes, all of it answered for her. Vincent remained silent for a long moment, his gray gaze traveling from Clara's tangled hair to the thin coat that was no match for an October night, to her trembling hands resting on her lap. Then he spoke, his tone as calm as if discussing the weather. You owe me now. Clara blinked. What? I just saved you from an unpleasant situation. Vincent took a sip of wine. I declared you mine in front of this entire restaurant. My reputation is now tied to you whether you like it or not. That is a debt, Clara Bennett, and I always collect what I am owed. How do you know my name? The wallet in your coat pocket? He smiled coldly. Tony checked while you were busy shaking under the table. Clara felt the blood drain from her face. She had not even realized anyone had touched her. What do you want? She asked hoarsely. I do not know yet. Vincent rose, buttoning his jacket with deliberate slowness. But for now you are coming with me. We have much to discuss, and I do not like conducting business in public. Where? To my house, he replied simply, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. Do not worry, Clara. I do not bite, at least not tonight. Salvatore laughed loudly behind them, and Clara looked at Vincent Moretti, the most powerful mafia boss in New York, and realized she had just leapt from the fire pit straight into the mouth of a volcano. The black Bentley glided through the streets of Manhattan in silence. Clara sat in the back seat less than an arm's length from Vincent Moretti, yet that distance might as well have been an abyss. She tried to make herself as small as possible, pressing against the door, feeling the icy chill of the bulletproof glass seep through her thin coat. Tony drove, his eyes flicking to the rearview mirror now and then. Salvatore followed in another car behind them. No one spoke for the first 10 minutes. Tell me about Marcus Webb, Vincent finally said, his gray eyes fixed straight ahead. What is there to tell? Clara replied, her voice hollow. He is a construction site manager. She met him 4 years earlier when she was working night shifts as a waitress. He was kind at first. They all are at first. Then he began to control her. Her money, her friends, her job, everything. Vincent did not look at her. And you stayed for 4 years. She had nowhere else to go, Clara said bitterly. No family, no friends. He made sure of that. She owed $60,000 in hospital bills for her foster sister who had died. He paid part of it and used it to keep her trapped. Every time she tried to run, he found her. Every time he found her, things got worse. Why did you run this time? She discovered he had been secretly filming her, selling the footage to third parties. Clara's voice broke. That was the final straw. Vincent was silent for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was still cold as ice, but something had changed, a hardness that had not been there before. Men like Marcus Webb, he said slowly. They do not stop until they are stopped. Clara knew that. She knew it better than anyone. I have a proposal for you. Vincent finally turned to look at her, and Clara felt as though he were seeing straight through her. Every scar, every fear, everything she tried to hide. The Castellano family is pressuring me to marry the daughter of Dominic Castellano, a political marriage to unite 2 families. I have no interest. So what? Clara asked, not understanding how this concerned her. You arrived at a very convenient moment. Vincent smiled, a smile as cold as the October night outside. An unexpected girlfriend, a serious relationship, the perfect reason to refuse the engagement without starting a war between families. You want me to pretend to be your girlfriend, Clara said slowly, making sure she understood. Pretend so you do not have to marry your enemy's daughter. Exactly. You will live in my house, attend events with me, present ourselves in public as if we are in a real relationship. In return, I will protect you from Marcus Webb. He will never touch you again. For how long? Until the Castellano matter is resolved. Maybe a few weeks, maybe a few months. And if I refuse," Vincent tilted his head, "then you are free to leave right now. I will have Tony stop the car, and you can step out into Manhattan at 11 o'clock at night, with $17 in your pocket, and a violent man hunting you." Clara looked out the window. Skyscrapers slid past, streetlights flickered. People walked along the sidewalks as if the world were completely normal. But her world had not been normal for a very long time. She thought of the miserable apartment Marcus had rented for her, where every wall was soaked in fear. She thought of nights curled on the floor after he unleashed his rage. She thought of Mia, her foster sister who died in her arms because there was not enough money for treatment. She had nothing left to lose. "I agree," Clara said, her voice steadier than she expected. "But I have conditions." Vincent raised an eyebrow, amused. "Conditions? From someone desperate. Even desperate people have the right to negotiate." Clara replied. She would play the role of his girlfriend, but she also needed to know what she was walking into. No secrets, no surprises, and he was not to touch her unless it was necessary for the act. Vincent studied her for a long moment, his gray eyes unreadable. Then he nodded slowly. "Agreed," he said. "Welcome to your new life, Clara Bennett." The Bentley turned onto a tree-lined road, and ahead a massive mansion emerged from the darkness like a sleeping beast. Sunlight filtered through the velvet curtains and woke Clara the next morning. She blinked several times, not recognizing where she was. The ceiling soared high above her, carved with intricate details. A king-size bed beneath her dressed in silk sheets soft as clouds. Oil paintings on the walls that looked as though they belonged in a museum rather than a bedroom. Then the memories of the night before crashed over her like a wave. Bellini's restaurant, the icy floor beneath the table, storm-gray eyes. Vincent Moretti. Clara jolted upright, her heart pounding. She looked around the room, larger than the apartment Marcus had kept her trapped in for 4 years. Everything spoke of wealth, from the crystal chandelier overhead to the Persian rug beneath her feet. A gilded cage, that was the first thought that entered her mind. She had traded one prison for another. A soft knock at the door made her flinch. "Miss Bennett?" A woman's voice came from outside. "I am Rosa, the housekeeper. I brought your breakfast." Clara pulled the covers up to her chest even though she was still wearing the clothes from the night before. "Come in." The door opened and a woman stepped inside, around 55 years old. Silver hair neatly pinned back, a kind face marked by the quiet gravity of someone who had seen too much of life. She pushed a silver cart laden with breakfast foods Clara had only ever seen in pictures: warm, flaky croissants, eggs Benedict, freshly cut fruit, squeezed orange juice, rich, fragrant coffee. "Good morning, Miss Bennett," Rosa said, her voice warm yet careful. "Mr. Moretti asked me to ensure you have everything you need. New clothes have been prepared in the wardrobe. The bathroom is stocked with personal items. If you require anything at all, simply press the button beside the bed." Clara glanced at the button, a small device mounted on the headboard, then back at Rosa. "Am I being kept here?" Rosa blinked, surprised by the bluntness of the question. "No, Miss Bennett. You are not a prisoner. You are Mr. Moretti's guest. You may move freely within the mansion and the gardens, for security reasons only. If you wish to go outside the property, you will need an escort." Security, Clara thought bitterly, a graceful word for being watched. Then she remembered Marcus and his friends, remembered his voice the night before. This is not over. Perhaps security was not such a terrible thing. "Where is Mr. Moretti?" Clara asked. "He has meetings early this morning," Rosa replied, arranging the plates on the table by the window. "He said he would meet with you at midday to further discuss your arrangement." Clara nodded, unsure whether to feel relieved or anxious that she did not have to face Vincent immediately. Rosa paused at the door before leaving. "Miss Bennett," she said more gently, "I do not know what circumstances brought you here, but I have worked for the Moretti family for more than 20 years. Mr. Vincent may be cold, he may be ruthless to his enemies, but he has never harmed women or children. You will be safe here." Then she was gone, leaving Clara alone with the lavish breakfast and her tangled thoughts. Clara rose and walked to the window. Outside stretched a vast garden with late-blooming roses, a marble fountain, and rows of perfectly trimmed trees. Farther still stood a high wall encircling the grounds, with the silhouettes of guards patrolling near the gate. beautiful, luxurious, and completely cut off from the outside world. Clara placed her hand against the glass, feeling the cold seep into her skin. She thought of Marcus's miserable apartment, where she had curled up night after night waiting for the sound of his footsteps, her heart racing, never knowing whether it would be a quiet night or a night from hell. At least here she was not afraid of being beaten. At least here no one smashed her phone, controlled every dollar she earned, or locked her in a room while he went out drinking. At least here she had a window to look through instead of a blank wall. A gilded cage was still a cage, Clara thought. But some cages were far worse than others. She returned to the table, took a sip of coffee, and for the first time in 4 years, she did not feel afraid as she began a new day. At exactly 12 o'clock at noon, Tony appeared at Clara's door and escorted her to Vincent's office, the room located on the ground floor of the mansion, vast and imposing with oak bookshelves stretching from floor to ceiling, a massive mahogany desk, and tall windows overlooking the garden. Vincent sat behind the desk, his jacket removed, sleeves of his white shirt rolled up to the elbows, revealing strong forearms and a faint tattoo Clara could not quite make out. He was reading something on his computer but looked up as she entered. "Sit down." He gestured to the chair across from him. "Did you sleep well? Better than the last 4 years?" Clara answered honestly as she sat in the soft leather chair. Vincent raised an eyebrow slightly, seeming to appreciate her candor. "Good. Now we discuss details." He slid a folder toward her. "This is what you need to know about the Castellano family and the marriage they are proposing. Dominic Castellano has a daughter named Isabella, 24 years old. He wants to unite our families through marriage to strengthen power along the East Coast, and you do not want that." "I do not marry for politics," Vincent replied coolly, "and I certainly do not marry a woman. Her father offers like a strategic gift." Clara flipped through the pages. A photograph of Isabella Castellano, beautiful with glossy black hair and sharp eyes. Information about the Castellano family, the tension between the two sides, the negotiations underway. "Your role is to appear as my girlfriend," Vincent continued. "Attend events, dinners with partners, occasions where it is required. Present a serious and stable relationship, so I have reason to refuse the engagement without igniting conflict." "And what do I get in return?" Clara asked. "Housing, security, clothes, food, everything you need. Marcus Webb will never come near you again. I had him watched starting last night, like a pet kept in a golden cage," Clara said calmly, a trace of bitterness in her tone. "You feed me, clothe me, give me a place to sleep, but nothing truly belongs to me." Vincent paused, gray eyes narrowing as he studied her. "What do you want?" "Money," Clara said plainly. "Not allowance money like for a child. Real money." She owed $60,000 in hospital bills for her foster sister. Interest compounding month after month, the debt only growing. She wanted to pay it. She wanted for the first time in her life to owe no one anything. Vincent was silent for a long moment, fingers tapping lightly on the desk. "You are negotiating with me," he said slowly. "A girl who hid under a table last night with nothing but $17 in her pocket is now sitting here negotiating terms with a Mafia boss." "Do I have another choice?" Clara asked back. "You need me for this plan. You could find someone else. But I am already here, already seen by witnesses, already declared yours. Starting over would take time and raise questions. I am not as foolish as you think, and you are not as kind as you pretend to be." Something flickered in Vincent's eyes. Amusement, respect. Hard to tell. "You are quite bold," he remarked, "speaking to me like that in my own house. Are you not afraid?" "I have been afraid for 4 years," Clara replied, her voice steady. "Being afraid of one more man changes nothing, but this time I want something for myself. Not because it is given, but because I deserve to be paid for what I do." Vincent studied her for a long moment, gray eyes unreadable. Then he laughed. A short laugh, not entirely cold. "Agreed," he nodded. "The $60,000 will be transferred into an account in your name this week. In addition, you will receive a monthly sum for personal use. Not allowance money, real money as you requested. In return, you will follow my direction at all public events. You will not speak to the press. You will not contact Marcus Webb, and you will not betray me." Clara nodded slowly. "Anything else?" "Yes." Vincent stood, walked around the desk, and stopped in front of her, close enough that she had to look up at him. "You will meet my niece, Lily, 9 years old. She lives here with me. You will treat her well, or this arrangement ends immediately. Is that clear?" Clara met his cold gray eyes and for the first time saw something beneath the calculation. A spark of protection, a tenderness buried deep under ice. "Clear," she said. Vincent nodded and turned away. "Welcome to the Moretti family. Clara Bennett." That afternoon, Rosa led Clara on a tour of the mansion. They passed through a living room lined with velvet-upholstered sofas, a dining hall with a long table that could seat 20 people, a library holding thousands of books, and a vast kitchen where a private chef was preparing dinner. Every room radiated wealth and power, yet carried a strange coldness, as if no one truly lived here and only existed. When they reached the corridor leading to the back garden, Clara noticed a small figure curled up on a stone bench beneath a maple tree. A girl about 9 years old with long black hair tied in a ponytail, wearing a pale blue dress, holding a book she was not reading. Her eyes stared into the distance with a sadness so deep it made Clara's chest tighten. "That is Lily," Rosa said softly. "Mr. Vincent's niece, the daughter of his sister, the sister who died 2 years ago in a car accident." Clara remembered Vincent's words that morning. Treat the girl well, or the arrangement would end immediately. Now she understood why his voice had softened when he spoke of Lily. "She looks lonely," Clara said. Rosa sighed. She was born deaf and mute. Her mother was the only one who truly understood her. Since she passed, Lily has withdrawn completely. Mr. Vincent hired tutors to teach sign language, but the child refuses to open up to anyone. None of us know how to communicate with her. Mr. Vincent is trying to learn as well, but he is busy and not very gifted at it. Clara felt a sharp ache in her heart as she looked at the small, lonely figure beneath the tree, so fragile and isolated in the vast garden, and she saw herself at 8 years old in the orphanage. Alone, afraid, unseen. "May I meet her?" Clara asked. Rosa looked surprised, then nodded. "Of course, but do not expect much. She does not respond to strangers." Clara crossed the grass toward the bench. Lily noticed her approach and shrank back, wide eyes watching Clara with a mix of fear and caution, like a small bird ready to flee. Delicate to the point of pain, Clara stopped a few steps away, close enough to be seen but far enough not to pressure her. Then she did something no one in this mansion could do. She raised her hands and began to sign. "Hello, my name is Clara. What is your name?" Lily froze. The book slipped from her hands, but she did not pick it up. Her eyes widened and her lips parted slightly as if she could not believe what she was seeing. "You know, sign language." Lily signed back, her small hands trembling. Clara smiled gently and sat down on the grass in front of her so they were eye to eye. "I used to have a sister." She signed slowly so Lily could follow. She could not hear either. "She taught me to sign. We talked like this every day." "Where is your sister now?" Lily asked, her small hands moving carefully as if afraid of the answer. "She is gone," Clara signed, her throat tightening. "To heaven, like my mother." Lily signed back, her eyes shimmering. 2 years ago. I miss her." "I understand," Clara signed. "I miss my sister too." Every day, they looked at each other in silence. A silence that was not heavy but warm and understanding. 2 lonely souls finding one another in a world that could not hear them. Then Lily did something Rosa said she had not done with anyone since her mother died. She smiled, a small, hesitant smile like the first flower after a long winter. Real and so tender it made Clara want to cry. "Will you stay here?" Lily signed, her eyes filled with fragile hope. "For a while," Clara replied. "Would you like me to teach you new signs?" Lily nodded eagerly, a spark of life appearing for the first time in those sad eyes. She shifted aside to make room for Clara on the bench. Clara picked up the book Lily had dropped and handed it back. "What book is it?" she signed. "A book about stars," Lily replied. "I like looking at stars. My mother said she would always be up there watching me." Clara did not know it was possible to care for someone so quickly, but looking at Lily she saw Mia. She saw herself. She saw every abandoned child searching for someone who understood. "Then tonight we will watch the stars together," Clara signed. Lily's eyes lit up like the very stars she loved, and neither of them noticed Vincent standing at the upstairs office window looking down into the garden. He had been there since Clara stepped onto the grass, witnessing the entire silent conversation, and for the first time in a very long while, the cold gray of his eyes softened slightly as he watched his niece smile. That night, after Lily had gone to sleep, Clara lay alone in the vast bedroom, and memory pulled her back into the past. She remembered the first day she met Mia at St. Mary's Orphanage in Brooklyn. Clara was 12 then, already marked by 3 failed foster placements, already taught to fold inward and trust no one. Mia was 7, thin with eyes as large as chestnuts, sitting alone in the corner of the common room while the other children played around her. No one played with Mia because she could not speak and could not hear. The other children called her mute, deaf, a monster. Clara punched a boy 2 years older than her for throwing things at Mia, and that was the first time Mia smiled at her. From that moment on, they were inseparable. Mia taught Clara sign language, using old books borrowed from the library. Every night the two girls lay side by side on a narrow bunk bed, Mia's small hands moving in the dark, telling Clara stories about the stars, about kingdoms beneath the sea, about how one day they would have a real home that belonged only to them. "I dream that we live in a house with a garden," Mia once signed, her eyes shining, "with roses and a swing, and a small dog. We will," Clara signed back, gripping her sister's hand. "I promise." But that promise was never fulfilled. When Clara turned 18 and left the orphanage, she worked 3 jobs at once to rent a tiny apartment and bring Mia to live with her. She thought it was a new beginning. She did not know it was the beginning of the end. Mia was 13 when doctors discovered a congenital heart defect. She needed emergency surgery, the kind that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars Clara did not have. She begged, borrowed, worked herself to exhaustion. The hospital agreed to operate first and bill later. Clara believed she had saved her sister, but fate did not allow it. Mia died on the operating table from unforeseen complications. Clara remembered vividly the moment the doctor stepped out of the operating room, his face ashen. "I am sorry. We did everything we could," she remembered screaming, pounding on the operating room door until her hands bled. She remembered holding Mia's body for 3 hours, refusing to let go, until nurses had to call security to pull her away. She remembered the small funeral with no one in attendance but herself. She remembered the empty apartment without Mia's laughter, without the small hands moving through the air to tell her stories every night, and she remembered the $60,000 debt the hospital sent her, the bill for a failed surgery, proof that she had not been enough to save the only family she had in the world. Marcus appeared 6 months later when Clara was at the bottom of despair. He promised to help her pay the debt, to protect her, to love her. She believed him. She was wrong. The 4 years of hell that followed were the price she paid for that innocence. Clara wiped the tears soaking into her pillow. She had thought she would never again be able to feel that kind of connection with anyone. And then that afternoon she saw Lily, saw the sad, wide eyes, the deep loneliness, the small trembling hands as she signed, and she saw Mia. Not in a mystical or supernatural way, but in Lily's shy smile when she realized someone understood her, in the fragile hope in her eyes when she asked if Clara would stay, in the way Lily tilted her head in curiosity. Exactly as Mia once had, Clara could not save Mia. She had failed her sister in the most painful way possible. But perhaps, just perhaps, she could do something for Lily. Perhaps this was the chance life was offering her, a chance to atone, to heal, to love again without fearing loss. She closed her eyes, and for the first time in 3 years her dream of Mia was not a nightmare. Her sister stood in a rose garden, smiling, her hands signing slowly. "You are all right. Lily needs you. Stay." 1 week later, Vincent announced that it was time for Clara to do her part. A dinner with the Castellano family was scheduled at a private Italian restaurant in Upper Manhattan, the kind of place with no name on Google Maps and service reserved only for invited guests. Clara stood before the mirror in her bedroom, staring at the unfamiliar woman reflected back at her. The floor-length black dress Vincent had sent clung to her body perfectly, revealing curves she had spent 4 years trying to hide with Marcus. Her hair was swept up in an elegant bun, exposing her slender neck and the diamond earrings Rosa had laid out on the vanity. She looked like someone else entirely, yet inside she was still the girl who had hidden under a table 1 week earlier. "You look beautiful." Lily appeared in the doorway, her hands signing slowly, like a princess. Clara turned and smiled at the child who had become the single bright spot in this uncertain new life. "Thank you," she signed back. "I will be home late. Do not stay up waiting for me." Lily stepped closer, her face serious. "Uncle Vincent will protect you," she signed. "He will not let anyone hurt what belongs to him." Clara did not know whether to feel comforted or uneasy by that remark. Tony appeared at the door and nodded to signal it was time. Clara took a deep breath, smoothed her dress, and stepped out. Vincent waited for her at the foot of the stairs, and Clara nearly stumbled when she saw him. He wore a black 3-piece suit, a white shirt, a charcoal silk tie, his dark hair slicked back to perfection. He looked like he had stepped out of a fashion magazine for the wealthy and dangerous. His gray eyes swept over Clara from head to toe, and she could have sworn she saw something flicker there before it vanished. "Are you ready?" he asked, his voice as cool as ever. "No," Clara answered honestly, "but I do not think I have a choice." One corner of Vincent's mouth lifted slightly. "You learn quickly." They arrived at the restaurant in silence. The moment they entered, Clara felt the tension beneath the polished surface. The space had been cleared to leave only one table at the center where two people already waited. Dominic Castellano was a man of about 60, white-haired, his face carved from something like granite. He rose as Vincent and Clara approached, his smile never-reaching, eyes sharp as a serpent's. Beside him stood Isabella Castellano, 24, coldly beautiful with coal-black hair and blood-red lips. She looked Clara up and down with undisguised contempt. "Vincent, how lovely to see you again," Dominic said smoothly. "And this must be the mysterious woman all of New York has been talking about." "Clara," Vincent replied, his hand settling at her back in a familiar, possessive gesture. "My girlfriend." They sat, and Clara felt as though she were stepping into a tiger's den. Each course arrived accompanied by questions disguised as courtesy. Dominic asked about her family, her work, how she and Vincent had met. Clara answered with carefully prepared half-truths, her voice steady despite her pounding heart. But Isabella was the real threat. She did not ask. She prodded. "Lovely dress," Isabella remarked, sipping her wine. "I assume Vincent bought it. I do not recognize the brand. Perhaps because it is not something you usually wear," Clara replied softly. "Everyone has their own taste." Isabella's eyes narrowed. "How interesting that Vincent suddenly has a girlfriend," she said, emphasizing suddenly. "He has never been serious about anyone before. Perhaps he simply had not met the right person," Clara replied without retreating. "Some things are worth waiting for." "Vincent Moretti has never been worth waiting for," Isabella laughed coldly. "He is a monster. All of New York knows that. Are you not afraid of him?" Clara set her fork down and met Isabella's gaze. "I have faced men who called themselves decent for 4 years. They hurt me, controlled me, nearly destroyed me. Vincent may be a monster in other people's eyes, but he has never made me afraid in that way. There are far worse monsters out there, and I survived them." Silence fell over the table. Dominic lifted an eyebrow as if reassessing Clara. Isabella pressed her lips together, losing ground for the first time, and Vincent, when Clara glanced at him, was watching her with a strange expression. The calculated indifference was gone, replaced by something warmer, deeper in those gray eyes, a spark of respect, a hint of surprise, and perhaps, just perhaps, something else Clara did not dare name. Beneath the table, his hand found hers and squeezed lightly in reassurance. The first touch not meant for show, and warmth spread from where they connected through her entire body. The dinner ended not long after. On the drive back, Vincent said nothing for the first 10 minutes. Then he spoke, his voice gentler than usual. "You did very well tonight." Clara looked at him, surprised by the rare praise. "I only spoke the truth." "I know," he replied, "and that is why it worked." By the time they returned to the mansion, the clock was nearing midnight. Clara intended to go straight to her room, but Vincent called her back. "Come with me," he said, not as an order but almost as an invitation. "I need a drink after tonight, and I do not like drinking alone." Clara hesitated for a moment before nodding. She followed him into a room she had never seen before. A smaller study than the main office, warmer, with a fire burning in the hearth, and deep brown leather armchairs. Vincent removed his jacket, loosened his tie, and poured 2 glasses of whiskey, handing one to Clara, before settling into the chair across from her, gray eyes fixed on the flames. "Dominic Castellano is not an easy man to deal with," he said after a long silence. "He built his empire on the blood and bones of his enemies. Isabella was raised to be his weapon, sharp and without mercy, but tonight you made both of them fall silent." "I only said what I thought," Clara replied, taking a sip of whiskey and feeling the warmth spread down her throat. "I would not know how to play it any other way. That is precisely what sets you apart." Vincent turned to look at her, and in the flickering firelight his face softened slightly, losing some of its usual edge. "You do not try to be someone you are not. You do not flatter or cower. You are simply yourself. That is rarer than you imagine in my world." Clara did not know how to respond, so she asked what had been on her mind. "Why do you not want to marry Isabella? Beyond the political reasons. If that marriage benefits both families, why refuse it?" Vincent was silent for a long moment, fingers slowly turning the glass in his hand. Because I have seen what a marriage without love looks like, he said, his voice lowering. My parents, they married for family alliance. They lived under the same roof for 30 years without ever seeing each other as real people. My mother died lonely. My father died full of hatred. I will not repeat that mistake. I am sorry, Clara said softly. There is no need, he replied. That is the past. But it reminds me that there are things money and power cannot buy. He looked at Clara, his gray eyes warmer in the firelight than she had ever seen them. My sister was the only one in this family who ever had a happy marriage. She loved her husband, an ordinary man with no connection to this world. They had Lily. They had real love, and then she was gone. Vincent paused, and Clara saw a flash of pain cross the face that was usually cold as ice. Lily is all she left behind, he continued, and I failed her. I do not know how to care for my niece. I do not know sign language. I worked too much and left her alone for too long. Then you appeared 1 week ago, hiding under my table with $17 in your pocket, and somehow you did what I could not do in 2 years. You made Lily smile. You saw Lily signing with me, Clara asked, surprised. I see everything in this house, Vincent replied. That is my job, but there are things I see not to control. I see because I care about Lily, and now, he stopped, his eyes never leaving Clara, perhaps about you as well. Clara's heart began to race. She did not know how to interpret that statement. The man before her was a Mafia boss, the most dangerous man in New York, someone she had entered an agreement with purely to survive, yet in this moment, in the warm room with the fire crackling and whiskey in hand, he looked like an ordinary man, lonely, tired, and perhaps searching for a real connection just as she was. You do not have to care about me, Clara said quietly. I am only part of the arrangement. You were, Vincent replied, his voice like silk in the darkness. But perhaps things are changing. He said nothing more, and neither did Clara. They sat in silence watching the fire, and for the first time since Clara stepped into this life, the silence was no longer heavy. It was warm. It was safe. And when she finally rose to leave, Vincent added one last thing. Sleep well, Clara, his voice softer than she had ever heard it. She smiled faintly before closing the door. You too, Vincent. 3 days after that night, Clara's life began to find a new rhythm. Each morning she ate breakfast with Lily, teaching her new signs, and listening as the child shared stories about the astronomy books she was reading. Each afternoon she walked through the garden, or read quietly in the library. Each evening, if Vincent was not tied up in meetings, the three of them ate dinner together, a strange picture of family that none of them dared to name. Clara began to forget fear. She began to sleep without nightmares. She began to believe that perhaps Marcus Webb had given up, had accepted that she no longer belonged to him. She was wrong. The new phone Vincent had bought for her rang one afternoon while she was sitting in the garden with Lily. An unknown number. Clara hesitated for a second before answering. Miss me, Clara. Marcus's voice cut through the line like a blade straight into her chest. Clara froze. The blood drained from her face. Her hand clenched the phone until her knuckles turned white. You really thought you could hide from me by crawling into the bed of that Mafia bastard? Marcus laughed, the same laugh Clara had always heard before a beating. I know where you are. That big mansion on the Upper East Side. Right. Beautiful garden. I've seen you walking there with that deaf little girl. Clara's heart nearly stopped. He had been watching her. He knew about Lily. You belong to me, Clara, Marcus continued, his tone shifting from mockery to threat. You always have. That Moretti bastard can't protect you forever. And when I take you back, I'll teach you a lesson you'll never forget. Clara ended the call, her hand shaking so badly she nearly dropped the phone. Lily looked up at her anxiously, small hands signing quickly. Are you okay, Clara? Why are you so pale? Clara forced a reassuring smile. It's nothing. I just need to talk to Uncle Vincent for a moment. Stay here, and wait for me. She walked quickly into the house, forcing her legs not to run. She did not want Lily to see her panic, but inside she was unraveling. The fear she thought she had buried was crawling back up from her gut, tightening around her throat. Vincent was in his office when Clara burst in without knocking. He looked up from his papers, gray eyes narrowing at the sight of her face. What happened? He asked, already on his feet. Marcus, Clara breathed, her voice shaking. He called me. He knows I'm here. He's been watching. He saw Lily. Vincent said nothing, but the air in the room shifted, as if the temperature had dropped by 20 degrees. His eyes darkened, His jaw tightened, and Clara saw what Isabella Castellano had meant. The monster, the man all of New York feared. Yet strangely, she was not afraid. She felt safe. "Sit down," Vincent said, his voice frighteningly calm. He guided Clara to the sofa, pressed a steadying hand to her shoulder, then turned and hit the call button on his desk. Tony appeared within a minute. "Boss, Marcus Webb," Vincent said, each word landing like a bullet. "He is watching my property. He has seen Lily. Find him. I want to know where he is, where he sleeps, where he breathes. I want our eyes on him 24/7. And if he comes within 100 meters of my property, I want to know immediately." Tony nodded and disappeared. Vincent turned back to Clara, and she was startled when he knelt in front of her, bringing them eye to eye. "Look at me," he said, his voice still cold but something softer flickering in his eyes. "Marcus Webb will not touch you. He will not come near Lily. He will not come near anyone in this house. Do you understand? How can you be sure?" Clara whispered, tears threatening to spill. "He found me before. Every time I ran, he found me." "Because last time you didn't have me," Vincent replied, his hand lifting her chin, forcing her to meet his gaze. "Now you do. And I protect what belongs to me. He won't touch you. I don't share what's mine." Clara did not know whether to feel comforted or unsettled by the way he claimed her as his. But in that moment, with his warm hand against her cheek and those gray eyes filled with unshakable resolve, she chose to believe. She chose safety. She chose to stay. 1 week passed after Marcus's call, and Clara lived in a state of constant vigilance. She no longer went into the garden alone, no longer stood near the windows for too long, and every time her phone vibrated, her heart raced wildly. Yet Marcus did not call again. Tony reported that he was still at his old apartment, going to work as usual, drinking with Jake and Connor on weekends. It seemed the threat had been just a threat, or perhaps Marcus was waiting for something. That night Clara could not sleep. She wandered downstairs at 2 a.m. to get a glass of water, and that was when she saw something she was never meant to see. Salvatore Conti, Vincent's closest advisor, the man with the scar cutting across his eyebrow whom Clara had met on that fateful night at Bellini's, was slipping out through the back door of the mansion. He glanced around as if checking whether anyone was watching, and Clara quickly retreated into the shadows of the hallway, her heart pounding as she peered through a narrow gap. Salvatore headed toward the side gate where a black car waited. The headlights flared for a second, and Clara caught a fleeting glimpse of someone seated inside. Salvatore spoke with the person for about 5 minutes, accepted an envelope, then returned to the mansion by the same path. Clara hid behind a statue in the corridor, scarcely daring to breathe. Salvatore passed within a few meters of her, and she could have sworn she smelled Cuban cigar smoke, the kind Vincent never smoked. Only when Salvatore's footsteps faded up the stairs did Clara finally exhale. She did not know what she had just witnessed. Perhaps it was routine business. Perhaps it was a meeting Vincent knew about and approved. Perhaps she was becoming paranoid after Marcus's call. But something felt wrong. She sensed it in her bones, in the survival instinct that had carried her through 4 years with Marcus. Salvatore was hiding something. The next morning, as Clara was teaching Lily new signs about the planets, the child suddenly stopped and looked toward the window. "Uncle Sal is walking through the garden, talking on the phone, and he looks angry." Lily signed, her large eyes anxious. "I don't like Uncle Sal." "Why?" Clara asked, keeping her tone calm. "He looks at me like I am trash," Lily signed, her small hands trembling. "He thinks I don't understand because I can't hear, but I see the way he looks. He doesn't like me being here. He doesn't like Uncle Vincent spending time with me." Clara's chest tightened. She pulled Lily into her arms and held her close. "Has he ever done anything to you?" she signed when they pulled apart. Lily shook her head. "No, but I'm scared of him. His eyes are very cold, like a snake's." Clara remembered Salvatore's eyes that night at Bellini's. Sharp, calculating, and now that she thought about it, he had always looked at her with suspicion, as if she were a threat to be eliminated. He looked at Lily the same way, as if the child were an inconvenient obstacle. "You don't need to be afraid," Clara signed, trying to reassure Lily even though she did not fully believe her own words. "I'm here with you, and Uncle Vincent will always protect you." Lily nodded, but the fear still lingered in her eyes. From that moment, Clara decided she would watch Salvatore more closely. She had no proof, only a late-night meeting and a child's unease, but she had learned one thing in 4 years with Marcus: never ignore your instincts. They could save your life. In the days that followed, Clara began observing Salvatore discreetly. The way he spoke on the phone, then ended the call abruptly when someone approached. The way he glanced at Vincent when he thought no one was watching, a look not of a loyal advisor but of a man waiting for his moment. The way he disappeared at odd hours and returned with the scent of Cuban cigars clinging to his clothes. Clara did not know what Salvatore was doing, but she knew one thing for certain. He was hiding something from Vincent. And in the world of the Mafia, secrets could kill. 2 weeks after the night she saw Salvatore slip out, Clara still had not told anyone about it. She had no proof, only scattered fragments that did not yet form a complete picture, and she was afraid that if she were wrong she would destroy everything she had begun to build. The anxiety robbed her of sleep, and that night, when the clock showed 2 a.m. and she could no longer lie still for another minute, she decided to go down to the kitchen to make a cup of tea. The mansion lay silent, her footsteps echoing softly on the wooden floor. But when she entered the kitchen, she was not alone. Vincent sat at the island counter, a glass of whiskey in front of him, sleeves rolled up, his hair tousled as if he had run his hands through it again and again. In the dim light of the small kitchen lamp he looked more tired than Clara had ever seen him. "Can't sleep?" he asked without looking up. Clara stopped at the doorway. "Neither can I." He gestured to the chair opposite him. "Sit. Whiskey or tea?" "Tea," Clara replied as she sat, unsure she could handle whiskey at 2 a.m. Vincent rose, and Clara was surprised to see him make the tea himself, the most powerful Mafia boss in New York standing in the kitchen at midnight, brewing tea like an ordinary man. The image was so strange it felt almost unreal. He set the cup in front of her and returned to his seat, taking a sip of whiskey. "I usually don't sleep well on this day every year," Vincent said, his voice lower than usual. "The day my sister died." Clara did not know what to say, so she stayed silent and listened. "Elena," Vincent continued, his gray eyes fixed on the empty space ahead. "She was 8 years younger than me, when our parents were consumed by their power struggles. I was the one who raised her. I taught her how to ride a bike, took her to school, chased off boys who dared to bully her. She was the only light in this house of darkness. Then she met Michael, her husband." Vincent smiled, a rare and sorrowful smile. "An ordinary engineer. Nothing to do with our world. I hated him at first, thought he wasn't good enough for my sister, but he loved her, truly loved her, and she was happy with him in a way she had never been happy in this family. They had Lily," Vincent went on, "and when Lily was diagnosed as congenitally deaf, they both learned sign language to communicate with her. They never saw it as a disability, only as a different way of speaking. Lily was loved more deeply than any child I have ever known." "What happened?" Clara asked softly. "A car accident," Vincent replied, his voice dry. "A drunk ran a red light. Elena and Michael died instantly. Lily was in the back seat, saved by her child's safety seat. She was 7 years old, and she lost both parents in one night." Clara felt tears sliding down her cheeks. She did not know when she had begun to cry. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I took Lily in because it was what Elena wanted," Vincent said. "But I don't know how to be a father. I don't know sign language. I don't know how to comfort a grieving child when I myself am drowning in grief. All I knew how to do was throw money at the problem. Tutors, nannies, anything money could buy. But money doesn't buy love, and Lily needs love." Clara placed her hand on the table, close to Vincent's but not touching. She understood, she whispered. Her foster sister Mia was deaf as well. She taught Clara sign language when Clara was 12 and had no one in the world. She was the only family Clara had ever known. Vincent looked up at her, the gray in his eyes no longer cold. "What happened to her?" "A congenital heart condition," Clara answered, her voice catching. "She needed surgery. I worked 3 jobs, borrowed from everyone, begged the hospital to operate first and bill later, but Mia didn't survive the operation. She was 13, and I couldn't save her." Vincent said nothing, but his hand moved across the table and closed over Clara's. Warm, steady, a connection that needed no words. "That's why you understand Lily," he said quietly. "Not just because you know sign language, but because you understand her pain. You know what it means to lose the one you love most, and you know what it means to be left alone." Clara nodded, trusting her voice no longer. They sat like that in silence, hand in hand, 2 strangers bound by loss and sorrow. Outside the window, the sky began to shift from black to gray, signaling the approach of dawn. "Thank you," Vincent finally said. "For Lily, for tonight, for being here." Clara smiled through her tears. "Thank you. For listening." They said nothing more. But when Clara finally stood to return to her room, Vincent did not release her hand right away. He held on for one more second, his fingers tightening slightly, as if he did not want to let her go. Then he released her, and Clara walked away with her heart pounding faster than it had at any moment since she arrived. Something was changing between them, and this time, she was not afraid. After that night in the kitchen, Clara knew she could no longer remain silent about Salvatore. She began to observe him methodically, noting the times he disappeared, the mysterious phone calls, the furtive glances he cast toward Vincent when he thought no one was watching, and then she found the proof she needed. That afternoon, as Clara walked along the second-floor corridor, she heard Salvatore's voice carrying from a small room often used for private meetings. The door was open just a few inches, and she stopped, pressing herself against the wall. "Dominic, everything is going according to plan," Salvatore said, his voice low but unmistakably clear. "Vincent trusts me completely. He suspects nothing. The new girlfriend is the only complication, but I will handle her." Clara stopped breathing. Dominic Castellano." Salvatore was speaking to Vincent's enemy. "Yes, I understand," Salvatore continued. "When the time comes, I will open the gates for your men. Vincent will have no time to react. The Moretti family will be ours." Clara's heart slammed wildly against her ribs. She pulled out her phone, her hands shaking so badly she could barely control them, and took a photograph through the narrow opening. The flash went off. No. Clara had forgotten to turn off the flash. The door flew open and Salvatore stood there, his eyes narrowing like a snake's, as he took in the phone in her hand, and her position just outside the door. He understood instantly. "How much did you hear?" he asked, his voice cold as ice as he stepped toward her. Clara backed away. "Enough," she said, forcing her voice to stay steady while her heart tried to leap from her chest. "I will tell Vincent," Salvatore laughed, a sound utterly devoid of warmth. "You think Vincent will believe you?" he asked, taking another step closer. "A nobody with no family, no past, who ran into his life from under a restaurant table. Or me, the man who has stood beside him for 20 years, his closest advisor, almost a brother. He will believe me," Clara said, retreating another step. "Because I have proof." "Proof." Salvatore glanced at the phone in her hand, a blurry photo and a few overheard words. "That is not proof. That is the accusation of a paranoid girl." He moved in close and Clara felt his breath, the scent of Cuban cigars and threat. "Listen carefully, little girl," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "You should stay in your place, play the pretty girlfriend, play with the deaf child, and stay out of grown men's business. If you open your mouth to Vincent, I will make sure Marcus Webb knows exactly which room you sleep in, which windows have no locks, and when the guards change shifts. Do you understand?" Clara felt the blood freeze in her veins. He was threatening not only her but Lily, Vincent, everything she had begun to care about. "I understand," she said, her voice trembling though her eyes never left his. "Good," he smiled and stepped back. "Smart girl. Keep it that way." He turned and walked away, leaving Clara alone in the corridor with her heart pounding like a war drum. She looked down at the phone in her hand. The photograph was blurred but clearly showed Salvatore holding a phone, and she had managed to record part of the conversation before the flash betrayed her. Not much, but enough. Salvatore thought she would be frightened into silence. He was wrong. Clara had been silent for 4 years with Marcus, and that silence had nearly killed her. She would not repeat that mistake. She would tell Vincent. Not because she needed his protection, though she trusted it. Not because she needed to prove loyalty, though she wanted to. But because of Lily. Because of the 9-year-old girl who had already lost too much to lose, the only uncle she had left. Because of the way Lily looked at Vincent with complete trust and love. Clara would not let Salvatore destroy that. She took a deep breath, tightened her grip on the phone, and walked toward Vincent's office. Clara pushed open the door to Vincent's office without knocking. He looked up from the stack of papers, gray eyes narrowing as they took in her pale face. "What is it?" He rose at once. "Salvatore," Clara said, her voice trembling but resolute. "He is betraying you. He is working for Castellano." Vincent stood perfectly still, like stone. The silence stretched 5 seconds. 10 seconds. 15. Then he spoke, his voice colder than Clara had ever heard it. "Do you know what you are saying?" "I do." Clara stepped closer to his desk. "And I have proof." She handed him her phone, showing him the photograph and the short recording. Salvatore's voice filled the silent room, speaking of plans, of opening gates, of Vincent having no time to react. When the recording ended, Vincent said nothing. He set the phone down, walked to the window, his back to Clara. "Salvatore has been with me for 20 years, he said, his voice low and tight. "When my father died, he helped me hold the family together. When Elena died, he stood beside me at the funeral. He was like a brother to me, and brothers can betray you too," Clara replied softly. She told him about seeing Salvatore slip out to meet a stranger at 2 a.m. 2 weeks earlier, about the way Salvatore watched him when he thought no one noticed. "Lily is afraid of him, Vincent," the child said. "His eyes are cold like a snake's." Vincent turned back, and Clara saw something she had never seen in his eyes before. Pain, not the pain of the body, but the pain of betrayal, of realizing the man he trusted most had been holding a knife behind his back. "Why did you tell me?" he asked. "You could have stayed silent and kept yourself safe." "Salvatore threatened you, didn't he?" "Yes," Clara admitted. "He said he would tell Marcus which room I sleep in, and you still came here." Vincent stepped closer, knowing you were putting yourself in danger, knowing I might not believe you. "For Lily," Clara said, meeting his gaze, "because she has already lost too much, because she looks at you as if you are her whole world. I couldn't let Salvatore destroy that. And for you," she added more quietly, "because after that night in the kitchen I knew you deserved the truth." Vincent studied her for a long moment, gray eyes unreadable. Then he nodded slowly. "I will investigate," he said. "Tony is the only person I trust besides Salvatore. I will have him verify this quietly, if what you say is true." He paused, jaw tightening. "Salvatore will pay. And now?" Clara asked. "Now you stay close to Lily, and you do not leave the mansion," Vincent replied. "Do not let Salvatore know you have spoken to me. Act normal as if nothing has happened. Can you do that?" Clara nodded. She had acted for 4 years with Marcus. She could act a few more days. "Good." Vincent placed a hand on her shoulder, squeezing gently. "Thank you, Clara, for having the courage to tell the truth." She left the office with her heart racing but lighter than before. She had done the right thing. She knew it, but she did not know that Salvatore had eyes everywhere in the mansion. One of the servants had seen her enter Vincent's office tense and leave calmer. The news reached Salvatore in less than an hour. The girl talked. Salvatore muttered, his snake eyes narrowing to slits. He pulled out his phone and dialed a familiar number. "Dominic, the plan has to change. We need to move sooner, and I need the help of an old friend of Clara Bennett's, Marcus Webb. I believe he is very eager to see her again." He ended the call and smiled. A smile cold as a winter night. The girl thought she could ruin a plan 20 years in the making. She was about to learn a lesson, and it would be a painful one. 2 days after her conversation with Vincent, Clara tried to live normally as he had instructed. She ate breakfast with Lily, taught the child new signs, read in the library, and avoided Salvatore whenever possible. Yet she could feel his gaze burning into the back of her neck whenever they crossed paths in the mansion. The stare of a snake waiting for the perfect moment to strike. That afternoon the sky was unusually clear for November, and Lily insisted on going into the garden to collect red maple leaves for her collection. Clara agreed, believing the gardens of the Moretti estate to be one of the safest places in the world. However, as they stepped onto the grass, Clara noticed the usual patrol guards were strangely absent. She frowned, intending to ask Salvatore about the shift change, but she was wrong. They were sitting beneath the large maple tree, Lily signing excitedly about the most beautiful leaves she had found. When Clara heard footsteps, not the measured steps of a gardener or a patrolling guard, but fast, purposeful steps closing in, she looked up and the blood in her veins turned to ice. Marcus Webb stood less than 10 meters away, with Jake and Connor at his sides. And behind them, Salvatore Conti smiled like a cat that had cornered its prey. "Hello, Clara," Marcus said, his voice sweet in a way that made her stomach churn. "Did you miss me?" Clara stood at once, pulling Lily behind her and shielding the child with her body. Lily could not hear anything, but she sensed the danger and clutched Clara's clothes, trembling. "How did you get in here?" Clara demanded, her voice stronger than she felt. "With a little help from my new friend." Marcus nodded toward Salvatore. "Turns out you didn't just cause trouble for me, you caused trouble for some very important people. And they want to teach you a lesson." Salvatore stepped forward, snake eyes fixed on Clara with contempt. "I warned you, little girl," he said coldly. "You should have kept your mouth shut. Now you and this deaf child are coming with us." "Don't touch her," Clara roared, clutching Lily tighter. "She has nothing to do with this. Lily has everything to do with this," Salvatore replied, She is Vincent's greatest weakness. He will do anything to get his niece back. Even give up power? He signaled Jake and Connor. Take them. Clara shoved Lily backward and turned to face the two men advancing. She did not know how to fight, but she would not let them touch Lily without a struggle. She drove her fist into Jake's face, pain exploding through her knuckles as they connected with his jaw. Jake staggered back, but Connor was already beside her. A punch to her stomach doubled her over, the air forced from her lungs, then a kick to her leg sent her crashing to the ground, her knee slamming into the wet grass. Clara. Lily tried to run to her, but Marcus grabbed the child's arm and yanked her away. No, Clara screamed, trying to rise, but Connor held her down. Don't touch her, Marcus, please. Marcus laughed, the same laugh Clara had heard before, countless beatings. You don't get to ask for anything, Clara. You lost that right when you ran. Lily struggled in Marcus's grip, her eyes full of terror and tears. She could not call for help. She could not hear Clara screaming her name. She could only see Clara being beaten and not understand what was happening. Get them in the vehicle, Salvatore ordered, quickly before the guards change shifts and notice. They hauled Clara up, bound her hands behind her back with hard plastic ties that cut into her skin. Lily was bound as well, her wide eyes locked on Clara in pure horror. Clara never looked away, mouthing words, nodding, trying to tell her everything would be all right, even though she did not know if it was true. They were shoved into a black windowless van. The doors slammed shut, plunging them into darkness. Lily crawled toward Clara, trembling, pressing herself against her as if seeking safety. Clara bent down and kissed the top of the child's head despite the restraints and the pain radiating through her body. The van drove for about 40 minutes before stopping. When the doors opened, Clara saw an abandoned warehouse, broken windows framing a sky that was already darkening, the air thick with the stench of damp and old machine oil. Brooklyn, she guessed, one of the deserted industrial zones she had read about. They dragged Clara and Lily inside and forced them into two battered chairs in the middle of the warehouse. Rope wound around their bodies, binding them to the seats. Clara never took her eyes off Lily, constantly pressing her lips together, nodding, trying to soothe her no matter how desperate the situation. Now we wait, Salvatore said, sitting on a nearby wooden crate and lighting a cigar. Vincent will receive the message soon enough, and when he comes, it will be the last day of the Moretti family. Marcus stepped close to Clara, bending until his face was inches from hers. As for you and me, he whispered, we have a lot of time to talk. Clara spat straight into his face. Marcus snarled and slapped her hard, snapping her head to the side as the taste of blood filled her mouth. But Clara smiled, a bloodied smile of someone with nothing left to lose. You can hit me, she said, her voice hoarse but unshaking, but you will never own me again. And Vincent will come, and when he does, you will wish you had never been born. Darkness swallowed the warehouse as the sun sank behind the shattered windows, leaving only a few weak bulbs hanging from the high ceiling. Casting a sickly yellow light onto cracked concrete, Clara sat on the battered chair, ropes biting into her chest and wrists, feeling every bruise blooming across her body. Yet she did not care about her own pain. She cared only about Lily. The child sat a few steps away, bound to another chair, wide eyes brimming with tears. As she looked at Clara, searching for answers, she could not ask aloud. Her thin dress offered little warmth, her lips tinged blue from cold and fear. Clara flexed her fingers as best she could. Even bound, she could still manage a few simple signs if Lily watched her hands. She waited until Marcus and his men moved toward the far corner of the warehouse to speak with Salvatore. Then she began to sign slowly. I am here. I will protect you. Do not be afraid. Lily saw Clara's fingers move, and her eyes brightened just a little, as if the thread connecting them had been pulled tight again. She nodded faintly, though tears continued to slip down her cheeks. Marcus returned with a can of beer in his hand, a look of satisfaction on his ugly face. He dragged a chair over and sat in front of Clara, close enough for her to smell alcohol and smoke on his breath. You know, Clara, he said, taking a swig, I have been waiting for this moment since the night you ran. I have imagined 100 ways to teach you a lesson. Clara did not answer. She refused to give him the pleasure of seeing her afraid. Instead, she focused on something she had spotted when they shoved her down. Protruding from the rusted metal frame of the chair behind her was a jagged, sharp piece of iron, broken off from years of neglect. They had not thought to check the old furniture. They thought she was weak prey. Nothing to say. Marcus tilted his head, feigning disappointment. You used to beg so much. Please don't hit me. Please let me go." He mocked her voice and laughed loudly. "I liked the sound of you pleading." Clara met his eyes. "I will never beg you again," she said calmly. "Never." Marcus stopped laughing, his eyes darkening with the familiar rage Clara had seen hundreds of times before he struck her. He stood and slapped her again, hard enough that her chair nearly tipped. "You will learn," he snarled. "I have all night." He turned away to confer with Salvatore, and Clara used that moment. She leaned her body, straining against the bindings to shift her position. Pain tore through her shoulder as she twisted her wrists at an unnatural angle, forcing them against the back of the chair until her fingers grazed the jagged iron edge. She began to rub the thick rope against the sharp metal, millimeter by millimeter, her heart pounding like a drum. Lily watched her, eyes wide with understanding. The child did nothing to draw attention, only sat still and kept watch on their captors. Clara began cutting at the rope around her wrist. The rusted metal was not very sharp, and the rope was thicker than she expected. Each strand took time and effort to sever. Blood began to bead where the knife nicked her skin, but Clara did not stop. She could not stop. 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. She cut steadily, hiding her movements whenever someone glanced her way. The rope weakened, until she felt it was close to giving way. Salvatore stood and took out his phone. "Time to call Vincent," he said to Marcus. "Let him know what we have and what we want." Clara tightened her grip on the knife and waited. She did not know whether Vincent would come, whether he would arrive in time, but she knew one thing. She would not sit here and wait to die. She would fight, for herself, for Lily, for every year she had allowed fear to rule her life. Tonight, fear ended, one way or another. The first gunshot tore through the night like thunder. Clara flinched, but her hand never stopped cutting the final rope. It snapped free just as the massive warehouse door was kicked open and hell broke loose. Vincent Moretti entered like death made flesh. Black vest, gun in hand, gray eyes cold as ice yet blazing with fury. Tony and at least 10 others surged in behind him, weapons raised, firing toward Salvatore's men. Gunfire thundered without pause, glass shattered, screams rang out. Bodies fell onto the concrete. Clara had no time to think. She lunged for Lily, her hands still slick with blood from cutting the ropes, and tore the bindings from the child. "Hurry, hurry, hurry," the words repeated in her mind like a prayer. The rope around Lily loosened, and Clara pulled her into her arms, shielding her with her body. Lily shook violently, eyes squeezed shut, face buried against Clara's chest. She could not hear the gunshots, but she felt the tremor of every blast tearing through air and ground. Clara scanned the warehouse for cover and saw a stack of large wooden crates in the corner, enough to shield them from the crossfire. She dragged Lily toward it, crouching low, running as fast as her battered body would allow. They had just reached the crates when Clara heard footsteps behind her. "You think you can run?" Marcus's voice roared out of the darkness. Clara turned and saw him standing there, blood streaming from a wound in his shoulder, his gun still aimed straight at her head. "Stay here." Clara signed quickly to Lily, pushing her deeper behind the crates. "Don't come out no matter what." Then she stood and faced Marcus, placing herself between him and the child. "Move aside." "Clara," Marcus snarled. "I don't need the kid. I only need you." "No," Clara said, her voice clear and strong despite the fear crushing her throat. "You'll have to kill me before you touch her." Marcus laughed, the unhinged laughter of a man with nothing left to lose. "Fine." He raised the gun, finger tightening on the trigger. Clara closed her eyes, thinking of Lily, of Vincent, of Mia. If she had to die to protect the child, then it would be a death with meaning, a death she was ready to accept. But the shot did not come. Instead, a voice cold as steel cut through the chaos. "Drop the gun." Vincent stood less than 5 meters away, his weapon trained on Marcus. His gray eyes did not look at Marcus at first, but at Clara, sweeping over her from head to toe as if checking whether she was hurt. Then his gaze shifted to Marcus, and Clara saw what Isabella Castellano had meant. The monster, the man all of New York feared, and this time she understood why. Vincent Moretti in this moment was not the man who brewed her tea in the kitchen at 2 a.m, not the man who held her hand and shared grief. He was a mafia boss. He was death given form, and he was looking at Marcus as if deciding which way to make him die the most painfully. "You think you can save her?" Marcus screamed, gun still aimed at Clara. "I'll shoot her before you can move. You can try," Vincent replied, his voice terrifyingly calm. But I guarantee you that whether you fire or not, you will not leave this warehouse alive. The only question is whether you want to die fast or die slow." Marcus hesitated. Clara saw his hand tremble, saw sweat bead at his temples. He was afraid. For the first time in 4 years, Marcus Webb was afraid. "Drop the gun," Vincent said again, stepping forward. "And I'll let you die fast. That's the only offer you'll get." Marcus looked at Vincent, looked at Clara, then back at Vincent. He knew he was beaten, but the madness in his eyes told Clara he had no intention of surrendering. "If I can't have her," Marcus whispered, swinging the gun back toward Clara, "no one will." Everything happened in a heartbeat. Clara saw Marcus's finger pull the trigger. She saw Vincent raise his gun. She heard 2 shots almost at the same instant, then pain exploded through her left shoulder and the world went dark. Clara collapsed onto the cold concrete floor, her left shoulder burning with a pain that felt as though a bar of molten iron had been driven straight into her bone. Yet she did not lose consciousness. She could not now. Through the haze of agony, she saw Marcus stagger as Vincent's bullet tore through the arm holding the gun. The weapon slipped from his grasp and skidded across the floor toward her, and she reacted on instinct, kicking it away and sending it sliding into the shadows where Marcus could not reach it. He screamed and tried to lunge for her. But Vincent was already there. One brutal punch to Marcus's face sent him crashing backward onto the ground. Tony appeared a second later, pinning Marcus down and binding his hands behind his back with hard plastic restraints. On the far side of the warehouse, the final gunshot echoed. Clara turned her head and saw Salvatore Conti collapse, blood spreading across his chest, snake-like eyes staring up at the warehouse ceiling in disbelief. Vincent stood there with his gun still smoking, his face utterly devoid of expression. 20 years, he said coldly, staring at Salvatore's body. 20 years at my side, and you betrayed me for Castellano. Hope it was worth it." Then he turned away and moved quickly to Clara, kneeling beside her, lifting her head carefully, gray eyes scanning the wound on her shoulder with a concern she had never seen in him before. "Clara," he called, his voice faintly unsteady. "Clara, look at me. I'm okay," she whispered, even as the pain threatened to rip a scream from her throat. "Lily, where is Lily?" "I'm here." Lily emerged from behind the stack of wooden crates, her face streaked with tears but unharmed. She ran to Clara and dropped to her knees, small hands trembling as she signed, "You were shot. You're bleeding. She'll be okay," Vincent said, one arm still supporting Clara while the other drew Lily close. "She'll be okay, I promise." Tony approached, hauling Marcus to his feet. Marcus glared at Clara with eyes full of hatred, blood streaming from his wounded arm and his broken nose. "Boss, what do you want done with him?" Tony asked. Vincent looked at Marcus and Clara saw pure killing intent in his gaze, the look of a man who had already decided the one before him would die. "Wait." Clara forced herself upright despite the pain. "Don't kill him." Vincent turned back to her, eyes filled with disbelief. "After what he did to you for 4 years, after he just shot you, and you want me to spare him?" "Not spare," Clara said, her voice weak but resolute. "Turn him over to the police." She had evidence of everything he had done, the secret videos he filmed, the threatening messages, witnesses from neighbors who had heard him beat her for years. He would go to prison. He would be locked away for many years, marked as a woman abuser, despised by other inmates. Death would be too easy for him. She wanted him alive and suffering. Vincent studied her for a long moment as though seeing her anew. Then he nodded slowly. "Justice your way," he said quietly. "Very well," he signaled to Tony. "Take him. Make sure the police get enough evidence that he never sees daylight again." Marcus screamed as he was dragged away. "You can't do this, Clara. You belong to me. You'll always belong to me." Clara watched him go, but there was no fear left in her eyes. "No, Marcus," she said calmly. "I belong to no one. I am free." When Marcus disappeared into the night, Clara finally let the pain claim her. She collapsed into Vincent's arms, feeling his warmth surround her. Lily clutched her hand tightly, wide eyes full of worry. She heard Vincent barking orders to call an ambulance, felt his hand stroking her hair, heard him whisper, "You were so brave. Now rest." "I'm here. I'll always be here." And Clara closed her eyes, believing for the first time in her life that someone truly would be there when she woke. 3 weeks had passed since the night of terror in the Brooklyn warehouse. The wound on Clara's shoulder had healed, leaving only a small scar that she knew would stay with her for the rest of her life. But it was a scar she carried with pride, proof that she had fought and that she had survived. Marcus Webb was sitting in a federal prison awaiting trial on a long list of charges ranging from domestic abuse and kidnapping to conspiracy to commit murder. Her lawyer told her he would not see the light of freedom for at least 20 years. The Castellano family had withdrawn after Salvatore's death and the failure of the coup. Dominic Castellano sent a formal apology to Vincent, a rare diplomatic gesture in the underworld, acknowledging his mistake and pledging not to cause further trouble. The war ended without more bloodshed, and Clara was still here in the Moretti estate, even though the danger had long since passed. Rosa asked her that morning while setting the breakfast table, "Miss Bennet, Mr. Vincent would like to know what your plans are next. You are safe now. You can go anywhere you wish." Clara looked out the window where Lily was playing in the garden with the small dog Vincent had just bought for her. She thought about the apartment she could rent with the money Vincent had given her, thought about the independent life she could build, thought about the freedom she had dreamed of for 4 years. But then she thought about Lily, about the child's smile every morning when she saw Clara, about nights spent stargazing on the rooftop, about small hands signing endless stories, and she thought about Vincent, about gray eyes that softened when they looked at her, about a hand that had held hers in the night of shared grief, about a man who had run into gunfire to save her without a second of hesitation. "Tell Mr. Vincent," Clara said, smiling at Rosa, "that I would like to stay, if he agrees." Rosa smiled, the knowing smile of someone who had lived long enough to recognize love when it stood right in front of her. "I think he will be very happy to hear that." That evening, Vincent found Clara on the rooftop where she was sitting on a lounge chair gazing at the night sky. Lily had gone to sleep after hours of stargazing with them. Exhausted but happy, Rosa said, "You want to stay?" Vincent sat beside her, not looking at her but at the stars. "Is that truly what you want?" Clara turned to him, surprised by the question. "You do not want me to stay." "I want to," Vincent replied, his voice deeper than usual. "But I need you to understand what that means. My life is not normal, Clara. I have enemies. I do things most of society considers wrong. I am the monster parents use to scare their children into behaving, and you think that should make me run away in fear?" Clara asked gently. "I think you deserve the truth before you decide." Vincent finally turned to her, gray eyes deep under the starlight. "I am not good at these things, Clara. Relationships, emotions, love. I have lived my entire life in the dark, and I do not know how to step into the light, but with you I want to try. If you will give me the chance." Clara felt her heart begin to race. She remembered the girl who had hidden under a table not long ago, shaking and desperate. She had changed so much since that night. She had reclaimed the strength Marcus had tried to steal from her. She had learned how to love again through Lily. And now she was sitting here beneath a sky full of stars with a man the world feared who was looking at her as if she were the most precious thing he had ever known. "I am not running anymore, Vincent," Clara said, lifting her hand to touch his cheek. "Not from Marcus. Not from the past. And certainly not from you." Vincent looked at her, and for the first time Clara saw him truly smile. Not the cold smile of a Mafia boss, not the polite smile for business partners, but the smile of a man who was happy if only for a brief moment. "Good," he whispered, "because I have no intention of letting you go." He kissed her, gently at first as if afraid she might shatter in his hands, then deeper and warmer as she wrapped her arms around his neck and drew him closer. Above them, the stars shimmered like witnesses to the moment two lonely souls finally found each other, two imperfect people carrying countless scars, yet together they were whole. When they finally pulled apart, Clara rested her head on Vincent's shoulder and looked up at the stars as she and Lily did every night. "Mia," she whispered in her heart, "you were right. I found my home. Not a building, but a person." And Clara realized that sometimes the best things in life begin in the most desperate moments. Sometimes hiding under a stranger's table can lead to finding a family. Sometimes the person the whole world fears is the one who teaches you how to be brave. And sometimes love finds you when you are no longer searching for it. The stars continued to shine, and for the first time in a very long while, Clara looked up instead of down. The view was breathtaking. The story of Clara and Vincent had come to an end, but its lesson lingered on. Life sometimes pushes us into its darkest corners, where we believe there is no escape, yet it is in that darkness that we discover our truest strength. Clara lost everything, was isolated, abused, stripped of her dignity, but she never lost hope. She never stopped fighting, and in the end, she found freedom, found love, found family in a way she never could have imagined. If you are going through a difficult season in your life, remember that darkness is only temporary. Believe in yourself, seek help when you need it, and never let fear control your life. You deserve to be loved. You deserve happiness. You deserve freedom. If this story touched your heart, please press the like button and share this video with the people you love. Do not forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss another moving story. We would love to hear your thoughts on this story. Have you ever lived through moments of despair and then found the light? What do you think about Clara's journey from victim to strong woman? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We read every comment and value each one from the bottom of our hearts. Thank you for taking the time to follow this story to the very end. Wishing you and your family good health, joy, and peace every day. Always remember that after the rain the sky clears, and the best things are still waiting for you ahead. Goodbye, and see you again in the next video.